Wow, thanks. Thanks for that introduction, Roxy. It sounds like I'm really busy. But I'm really happy to be here with you guys today. So this topic is, in general, has been something that I've been interested in for a very, very long time. And it plays a role in the courses that I'm involved with at Plymouth and Schumacher. And of course, this is the work that many of us have been doing here for a while. I know some things, but I don't know everything. So I get things wrong sometimes, but I will probably sound like I do know everything as we go along in this presentation. So I'll leave it to you to figure out what I know and what I don't really know. Now, let's see if I can share my screen. Okay, everybody sees a nice big full slide. Okay, so this is me. If you take down my details, you can reach me later if you want to get a copy of this or any sort of articles or academic papers that pertain to any of the things that I'm talking about. I'm happy to share them. So, whoopsie. Okay. So why are we here? Why are we here in this meeting? Why are we interested in any of this stuff? Well, hopefully it's to leave. We're all here because we're interested in leaving a positive legacy for our kids and our grandkids. It seems like in these days, nothing else really matters, or at least nothing matters more. The IPCC report came out a couple of years ago. Obviously, many of us have been aware of climate change and the climate emergency and the ecological crises and all the rest for quite some time. But the IPCC report a couple of years ago made it really clear that we had to drastically change the way we go about making our livings and meeting our needs. And in a very short period of time, there's really never been a bigger innovation challenge. And just to make things more interesting, the UK has decided to leave the EU. So if we've been paying attention to that, then we know that we're in for some more economic hard times just for that. And now with COVID, things are worse. So framing this kind of stuff as government and foundations are doing now in terms of post-COVID recovery, I think it's obvious that we need to respond to the crisis in front of us, but really the bigger picture is we need to transform our economic systems, and we need to do it quickly, whether or not there was COVID. Now there is both an acute need, but also an opportunity to kind of reinvent, reimagine, reconfigure. And I think for me, having this broader perspective helps to put things into context and makes it clear that we have a range of tools at our disposal to go about doing this. So if economic transformation is the goal, what do we want to transform to? And this is my way of articulating probably what we all agree and have our own way of articulating, but we need to get to an economic system that is fair and inclusive. So that seems obvious, and we also have to be ecologically wise. So I like using this turn of phrase more than sustainable or regenerative, simply because we need to understand and work with the economic systems around us and understand that we are a part of that. And this also then helps us to understand how we can create a thriving kind of social reality in our towns and villages and the countryside and cities. An economic system that kind of says yes to life, really. And all of this while being resilient to the shocks that we are experiencing now and the shocks that we know that are coming, being able to adapt, reducing our footprint by something like 50% in the next few years, and by more than that by the middle of the century. Huge, huge, huge challenges. Where are we now? Well, we're still kind of in this place. So you guys know what this is. This is the railway line that goes through Dawlish. And when this went out a few years ago, there was kind of chaos, and we were isolated here. And this line has been down a few times, and it illustrates how far we need to go. It was just a couple of years ago when we had that blizzard, and here we are in an agricultural area. We ran out of milk and bread. So fast forward to just this year, and we've got RAF jets going to Turkey to pick up scrubs and PPE equipment for the NHS, stuff that we could have made here. Why are we sourcing this stuff from around the world? This makes no sense, and it shows you how vulnerable we are. We have to send RAF cargo planes to other countries to pick up this stuff. Absolutely nuts. And so now we have we have real economic challenges to solve, and we have seen through all of this how much work there is to do, how fragile our system is. So I think the big question, the guiding question, is how can we create the conditions for new economic actors, new economic relationships, new economic models to emerge and flourish. So it's very much a systems thinking kind of question, very much about trying to create the conditions for many things to bubble up, and not just a top-down kind of targeted response, but really create the conditions for transformation in all kinds of ways. So probably there's a longer list than this of things that we can do to create the conditions, but I think for this very brief presentation, I think these things seem to be important to me anyway. We've got to put people first. We've got to build out sort of an enterprising ecosystem so that we can really stimulate innovation, new enterprise formation of various kinds, create new economic opportunities of various kinds, new ways of meeting our needs. The work coming from Mariana Mazzucato, I think, is very useful in this regard. So she talks about building mission-led innovation networks. Obviously, community wealth building. This is another piece of the puzzle. They all fit very well together. They're all very complementary, and having a broader view allows us to think in terms of a more regenerative economic system, or a more regenerative economic approach. So, putting people first. What are we talking about? Probably most of you are aware of the economic depression that happened 100 years ago. And in the United States, it was the beginning of social democracy there. And what was it called? I can't remember what WPA stands for, the Work Projects Administration, I think it was. And other programs that came from the Roosevelt administration put people to work, sometimes in make-work programs, but really they put people to work on all kinds of projects, whether it was from beautifying the city to real infrastructure kinds of projects, or remediating ecosystems and landscapes in the countryside and so on. So to me, this is a more instructive orientation than, say, productivity, which has been really kind of the mantra coming out of local enterprise partnerships, local authorities, and so on. Productivity is important, but at the moment, it's not what we need. It's not what we need to be thinking about. We need to be thinking about investing in people and putting people to work. and putting people to work in ways that are going to meet our needs and build resilience, address poverty and suffering and so on. Affordable housing, this is a big issue, I know, but also investing in our food system. So I think probably Greg will be talking a little bit about this later. Fresh and sufficient or abundant food, this should be a human right along with housing. Everybody should have access to this. So we need to be producing more food. We import something like 45% of our food in this country. We're about to leave the EU. This is crazy. So we need to be really investing in food. Renewable energy, obvious, health and care, education, all of these things are important, and they're opportunities to put people to work. Enterprising ecosystems. So there's a lot of really good academic literature on this, and there's some good experience for my own part. I grew up in Silicon Valley when it was Santa Clara Valley. I watched how it developed. I became a student of how it developed. I became a participant in its development, and there's some good lessons to be learned there. Some good lessons and some bad lessons. But it's an example of a really abundant entrepreneurial ecosystem, one that provides many pathways for getting things started. And I think this is something that can be instructive for us. So if we want to create a condition for transformation, those kinds of organizations that will lead the transformation will be new firms or entrepreneurial firms, existing firms that are innovating and moving into new areas. But we need to include more people in the economy, and creating new businesses is a pathway. So what do we mean by enterprising ecosystems? Well, if we think in terms of creating multiple pathways, then that will help us understand that we need spaces and institutions and other sort of elements of the system. And that translates into things like networks, local investor networks, angel networks would be a part of that. Other kinds of networks like social enterprise networks, convergence networks like the Regenerate Devon emerging network. Other things that can begin to create sort of an enterprising and entrepreneurial culture. So local entrepreneur forums, hackathons, workshops, those kinds of things. I listed REconomy, Local Spark, Epic, Exeter City Futures as examples of sort of meta entrepreneurial organizations. So incubation spaces or incubation programs or accelerator programs who can also kind of look around and say, well, what are the opportunities? And maybe we can pull together the elements to make things happen as kind of like an in-house entrepreneur, but I like meta entrepreneur because it sounds more interesting. But these kinds of organizations are an important part of the puzzle, and the spaces also that go along with them, where potential entrepreneurs can gather and work, meet. Southwest Mutual, super important. I know that Julian talked about the Northwest Mutual Bank that they're trying to incubate up there in Preston. Having a regional bank that is founded on the principle of a just transition and really oriented toward the needs of the enterprises in our region is a key part of this ecosystem. It's super, super important. Obviously, anchor institutions have an important role to play, and it's more than just procurement in all of this regard. And also the universities and the other educational institutions. They have a big part to play both in helping to train up potential entrepreneurs and other potential entrepreneurial team members, but also developing knowledge and spreading the knowledge, as well as creating opportunities for spreading the know-how. And there are other ways of spreading the know-how as well, but that's We can think about know-how as sort of like social capital, but it's an important part of the puzzle, and we've got loads of it in our region. What else? Mission-led innovation acts. There's a lot here to unpack, more than I can do in a couple of minutes, but maybe some of you have heard of Mariana Mazzucato. She's written a couple of excellent books, including Entrepreneurial State, but she talks about how the state or aspects of the state can lead innovation and really spark growth, the kind of growth that we're talking about too, by playing a proactive role in defining a mission for some kind of change that's clear, that is bounded, that's purposeful and inspiring. So the moonshot is the classic example. But by creating this kind of initiative, we can pull together the resources and the motivations to make it happen. But that's not all. It requires working in and through networks, creating collaborations. So you can imagine local authorities working with anchor institutions, working with meta entrepreneurs, working with universities and so on, in all kinds of interesting and different ways, seeding the field. So not just picking winners, but really being intelligent about supporting lots of different related complementary kinds of initiatives. I've written in here creating some chaos, because I don't know if you'll appreciate me sharing this, but Alan Denby, who's one of the key folks at Torbay Development Agency, was talking about how he liked to think about this, kind of stirring the pot and creating some discomfort, because from discomfort comes learning and innovation, hopefully.
Talking of a bit of chaos there, Jay, I'm just going to let you know there's give you a 5-minute warning.
Okay, thanks, Roxy. Okay, so obviously in terms of finance, there's opportunity to collaborate here in this context. And again, there's a big role for anchors. Now, finally, we've come to the big question: community wealth building. How can more local businesses be supported and grow to supply the needs of local authorities and large institutions? How can institutions create the conditions for local businesses to participate in supplying them? Well, hopefully I've given you a taste of the kinds of things that that can, in effect, create a good supply of potential vendors to anchor institutions. But if we're thinking in this way, we're thinking too narrowly. I want to come back to something that Julian shared, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, the first of these series, talking about the experience in Preston and that gap where they were looking to find organizations to shift their procurement to, but couldn't find them. So they realized they had to be involved in developing that supply, so to speak, closing that gap. So this is how we do it, I think, is by thinking systemically, creating the conditions, by building out an ecosystem, having some mission-led initiatives around innovation networks and so on. How else? Well, obviously, big institutions need to make it easier to work with local, smaller suppliers. How to do that? There's no way that question can be answered in 15 minutes. But if you're part of a big organization, I know how procurement works in a big organization. There's a job to do there, shifting the culture and in creating new kinds of policies and so on. It's probably not easy, but it's not impossible. This isn't rocket science. So that's a key one. And part of what can help to make that happen, and what would contribute to the other things I've talked about, is by being transparent and proactive. So if you're an anchor institution, letting the information flow about the kinds of things that you need, being open and collaborative about how to make those new kinds of vendor-supplier relationships work, or invent new kinds of relationships. And more than that, anchor institutions have economic power that they can use in different ways to support the development of enterprising ecosystems, or this sort of innovation network approach. And they can be entrepreneurial themselves. So what might that look like? Well, I showed you that image of the RAF jet loading up PPE and scrubs and all that. We can make those things here, and more. And in fact, in Torbay, there's an NHS subsidiary making pharmaceuticals. Why can't there be more of that activity? There's nothing stopping us. So one possibility might be the NHS working in collaboration with some meta entrepreneurial organization like Exeter City Futures or Local Spark Torbay or something like that, to create a cooperative that can produce the things that the NHS needs. And in fact, this can be done in Torbay, and it can be replicated in other places. The Southwest Mutual is part of a sort of franchise model. Why couldn't there be one in this regard as well? Another possibility is creating adult social care co-ops. There are a couple of really interesting models that people are talking about now, the Equal Care Co-op and the Colne Valley Adult Care Co-op. These are models that could be replicated. How might that work? Well, the local authority and the NHS and Local Spark and public health and social care departments of Torbay, and the people who might actually need this sort of thing or be providing the care, we could all collaborate and develop an adult social care co-op. There are tons of such examples that could happen if the approach taken was collaborative and open and flexible, open-minded, and oriented toward finding solutions. So I like to think about all of these approaches as being part of a broader umbrella of regenerative economics. Of course, I would say that because I'm coming from Schumacher College. But this broader umbrella would be transdisciplinary. It would understand that people are part of ecosystems. It would learn and apply the lessons from systems and complexity science, so working in the context of networks and creating the conditions for innovation and other things to emerge. And I think this is how we can rapidly transition to a new economic paradigm. So along the way, meeting the goals of a particular approach like community wealth building, but other kinds of approaches too that can put people to work and transform the kind of economic systems that we have to one that is about creating prosperity for all. Just a few more things that you can read later if you like. If you want to get a copy of this or see papers about any of this stuff, let me know and I will send them to you. So I know I whizzed through that pretty fast, but thank you very much. And I probably went over a little bit. Sorry about that, Roxy.
All right, thank you very much, Jay. That was brilliant. And I'll pass over to Greg now. Are you there, Greg?
I am. Sorry, yep, I am. Thank you very much. It's me. All right, let's share the screen. Get my ugly mug off of the screen. There we go. Okay, so Southwest Food Hub. Thanks for your introduction earlier, Roxy. Yes, Somerset Larder was one of the things I was very much involved in from the start. I always wince a little bit when people talk about Higby Point. I didn't ask to build the power station, and I realised there'll be better alternatives in place by the time they finish it. But back to the food, it's a good example of how community wealth building really can work, because at Heatley, you know, the motivation to get a local food supply chain together was the fact that they were going to spend £10 million a year on food and drink and wanted to spend it locally. So there was economic reasons why people wanted to get involved, and you know, now there will be 100 suppliers involved, 300 employees. money being spent well locally. So whilst it's not an institution, it's not an anchor institution in the truest sense, although it is owned by French government. It is an example of what a significant commercial opportunity can lend to the local community. But the Southwest Food Hub, which we established and have built over the last year, and actually registered ourselves as a community interest company in May of this year, has been set up with a specific purpose of preparing the Southwest to work in partnership with Crown Commercial Service, which is part of the government procurement team reporting into the Cabinet Office. So to prepare the Southwest to undertake a trial, a pilot, using some new technology that opens up public sector procurement. The public sector, depends who you listen to, procure between 1.2 and 2 billion pounds worth of food per year for all of its different services. I mean, to put that in perspective, because I always struggle with this, but you know, 1 million seconds is 12 days, 1 billion seconds is 31 years. So that's a lot of food, it's a big spend. And it's the sort of spend that can make a difference. So that's how it links. So much of that spend will be through anchor institutions in communities that can really make a difference. And to Jay's sort of challenge, really, you know, in terms of sort of presenting how it can happen within 15 minutes, I'll give it a go. And you know, the way in which this can work is very much being, I suppose, accelerated through the developments in information technology, particularly, you know, I'm sure we're all aware of a little company called Amazon that, you know, has been relatively successful, as an understatement, in recent times. But it's done that because it's grasped hold of the technology that allows a buyer to very, very quickly get to what they want to buy, and the seller and sellers of all shapes and sizes, be them small, be them international conglomerates, to be able to enter that marketplace and be an option for that buyer to buy. And that's very much that sort of technology is what is at the centre of our project in the Southwest. So what's happened essentially is Crown Commercial Services have assigned a budget to put in place a technology platform that will open up the marketplace for public sector procurement. That will mean that buyers from universities, colleges, prisons, hospitals, Ministry of Defence, they will be able to not just, they won't be reliant on the existing very much linear supply chains. They will be able to buy their produce through a platform that opens up opportunities to small and medium-sized producers as well. The big difference will be the marketplace will be open to anyone to enter, any suppliers to enter, based on meeting some minimum criteria, which will be around food safety and good practice. But any suppliers can enter, and because there's through the system, there's a logistics provider that sits separate to the actual produce. This logistics provider will bring together the produce, so the aggregated supply can be brought together to meet the needs of the anchor institutions, whereas in the past, suppliers have got to be at a certain scale to be able to actually do business, if you like, with the anchor institutions. But it's a big task, and we've been asked to prepare the region. So what does that look like, really? And so we've tried to sort of break it down into an approach that will hopefully be able to prepare the region, and we're hopeful that the actual the technology that's at the centre of it will be actually set live in the early part of 2021. So at the moment, what we're doing is communicating to as many buyers and sellers that might want to utilise the platform how it will work and how it will come about, and then that will evolve into actually helping suppliers in particular to prepare to engage with this opportunity. What I should say as well is the other big change to the way in which food and drink is bought for the public sector is that currently it's mainly through longer term, sort of 3 to 5 year contracts that are unbreakable and until they're up for change. Whereas this is a dynamic purchasing system, which is used in other parts of public sector procurement, but it's the first time it's been applied to food. And the idea is that, that it's a very, well, as it says in the word, it's a very open and dynamic purchasing arrangement. So changes can be made in decisions as people learn more about how they want to buy and who they want to buy from. So the approach we've taken is to actually work very closely, because the region for the southwest stretches from Gloucestershire right the way down to the foot of Cornwall. And we need as much help as we can get. So you can see it, to start off with, it was myself, Glenn and Ellen trying to get this thing off the ground. And Chrissy's joined us recently, but we thought we'd try and bring on board the help of the local enterprise partnerships, because they have significant influence at political level, but also they're very connected to the business community within their particular regions. So we've now engaged with all of the six local enterprise partnerships that cover the region. And we've got various levels of commitment. Some are helping to actually fund our people on the ground, such as Chrissy Story, who works in the West of England Combined Authority, and we've got a new person joining for Gloucestershire. So investing financially, ideally, but also just committing to being part of this very important trial, and which, if successful, will be rolled out to the rest of the UK. And what inspires myself and Glenn is that actually, if this can work for public sector, then there's no reason why the same principles and the same technologies couldn't be applied to private sector as well. And say the key thing is meaning that suppliers of all shapes and sizes can get involved in these significant supply opportunities. And of course, you know, we know that the spending locally not only has spreads the wealth throughout the community, but also what we're hoping, particularly in the food sector and in this strong agricultural sort of area that we have, can actually have really positive effects that help for the regeneration of the land as well, because that's, you know, as we're fully aware of, something that is a significant issue. And by encouraging and working with suppliers, we've got a great opportunity to actually change the way food is produced, and actually for the better start to meet some of these sort of aims that are being surfaced through the likes of the new agricultural bill and the environmental bill. So as I say, it's technology that's the heart of it, but for us, much of our time is spent talking to suppliers through events such as this, but through our own events as well. And we have our next event on the 26th of November, so next week, which is a bit of an update, and you can find out more about us at the southwestfoodhub.co.uk. But through events like this, we can motivate suppliers to start to get prepared for entering into this marketplace, but also, and maybe more importantly, we can explain to buyers in the public sector the importance and the differences they can make by engaging in this, and actually enable and how this can open up and help their purchasing decisions. Because without a shadow of doubt, you know, they have a significant opportunity to really support local economies. Social value is something that's been really given a lot.
Sorry, because I'm just.
Sorry. Hello.
I think that was an accident there.
Okay.
Carry on,
okay.
Greg.
That's all right. Okay.
Well,
then I will continue. I'm conscious that I'm sort of talking quite rapidly, but yes. It's part of our exercise is engaging with the anchor institutions in each of the regions to make sure they're aware of what's coming, what's going to become available to them, and then encouraging them to engage. And then once they're engaged, they can start to make more strategic decisions about how they want to buy their produce. And that's what's lacking at the moment, I think, is in public sector. Many of the buyers are under significant pressure to meet budgets, and also time pressures as well, and with lack of options. Often contracts are entered into for a long period of time, so they're simply unable to change the way in which they buy. But I think with this, with the new system, and particularly what's come about through the challenges in the last sort of 18 months, as Jay alluded to, Brexit has a significant impact for the food sector, and as does the COVID pandemic. And what's become really now very high profile for government and a high priority is to address this issue of food security. And that's helped food to get up the sort of priority order of government. And we are seeing, you know, an unprecedented sort of amount of attention given to our sector. So it's kind of a sweet spot, a unique opportunity to, whilst we've got their attention, change the way in which they approach public sector. So, you know, in the context of today's event, really, I think this is could be a leading light in the way in which we can work between anchor institutions and producers, particularly small and medium-sized producers, to create this community wealth. And what I would ask of the audience today really is to come and have a look at the website and find out more information about it. But more importantly, just believe that this is an opportunity, and share that as a positive thought with your colleagues and networks, because you know, it needs some goodwill behind it in an area that is really, in public sector particularly, there is a lot of cynicism over the way in which things have been procured in the past, and but this is a change for the good, so we hope that it will get the support that it deserves. Roxy, I'm sort of aware that sort of time-wise that's about me, and I've sort of probably rambled on enough, but I'm happy to take some questions if that's appropriate. Yeah,
thank you. I think Gill's going to be fielding some questions to yourself and Jay just now. Over to you, Gill.
That's right. We've got a few questions cropping up in the chat, and please do feel free to add. Thank you for that. Immediately, there are a couple of questions about whether, Jay McKay, do you want to